Just waiting for Mr. Samit Basu to arrive. Thank you.
This is indeed a wonderful setting, and I know that Malavika has been struggling to get this literary fest here, or literary meet here to the Victoria Memorial. So I'm in conversation with three absolutely fabulous authors. I've had the privilege of reading all three of them, really speaking. Nilanjana, because I'm a cat person, so it was quite the obvious choice. And Shovon and Samit as homework from Malavika. And I must say, I'm glad she gave me that homework because I really enjoyed them. What's very interesting to note is that we're having this discussion today on the birthday of one of the most well-known creators of the alternate world, Lewis Carroll, 27th of January, 1832. And so I'm going to start by a small quote from an American writer, Lawrence Watt Evans. He says that if a story can be written without a fantasy element, then it should be written without one. And here we have three examples of writers with a contrary approach. How do you respond to this? Anyone?
So one response.
I was watching you drink water. You respond.
You're too slow.
No, you respond. No, you.
Okay, Samit, since you were the last one in, you respond.
Yeah. What was the question? How do you respond to which?
It says that if a story can be written without a fantasy element, then it should be. That's what Lawrence Watt Evans said.
Yeah, in the sense that all stories are essentially fantasies, right? Because even if you're writing a sort of detailed report on, what happened in the meeting that you were just at, you have to create a fantasy so that it makes sense, right? Because real life doesn't make sense. Fiction has to make sense or it's not considered good. So you've got to make the rest up. Good non-fiction is also essentially
That's
fantasy
a good
writing.
tip. The next time I do a sales report, I'm just going to put some fantasies in that and hope that it works for me. Shovon, any thoughts?
I guess in our daily lives, we're doing fantasy all the time, like, expense vouchers and things like that. So I don't understand what this guy is talking about, honestly.
Okay. Well, he was one of the greatest fantasy writers, though, and he had 6 rules of fantasy, and then
he was
chooses
terrible.
to say something like that.
I'm still disagreeing.
But you're choosing to trust a man who made up talking lions. On the subject
No,
of
it's
what
just
we
a question, yeah.
and shouldn't write. He had demons as well and talking bears. No.
Who is this? I don't know who this is.
Oh, sorry, Lewis Carroll. I'm mixing
I
them
know
up.
Lewis
C.S.
Carroll,
Lewis.
yeah.
Huh?
C.S. Lewis also, I know.
Sorry, I'm mixing
Not very
them
good.
up. Well, other talking animals.
Too much religious fundamentalism.
I mean,
going on.
he had talking cats.
I don't approve.
Who would trust a person who wrote books about talking cats?
Yeah.
So we don't trust you, Nilanjana?
No.
If you're a cat, you do.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is
So that's why those who attended the previous session must have noticed a lovely cat that walked up to Nilanjana. Nilanjana.
I bribed it.
You did? Okay. Lovely blue eyes.
No cat food. It was like under her seat.
Well, she tried calling him, and he just decided to walk away, and then decided that the technicians, a belly rub by the technicians was more something that he really wanted.
It was a terrible choice. There was Gloria Steinem on stage and a really sweet white cat. So
Okay. With these alternate and fictional worlds that you talk about, write about, do you start identifying with them, with the characters in the real world?
No. No.
Okay.
I think we should ask Shovon this question because he has the dark, nasty, politicians.
Yes.
I completely relate because, for example, I've been deathly scared of policemen from a very early age. So I put a policeman in the book because, it would help me to sort of, it was like therapy, right? So I completely relate to all of them, I mean, Priyanka Gandhi, who wouldn't relate to Priyanka Gandhi, honestly?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I relate to all, except the competent authority himself, who's like this shadowy figure. I don't know him very well, but I'm sure if I got to know him, I'd relate to him too. So I'm very slutty that way.
So this competent authority you talk about, and you say that he's almost somebody that because you don't know him, you're kind of scared, you're kind of wary of him.
Yeah.
And is that how you see some of our politicians? Because a lot of what you write is related to, our Indian political scenario.
I think our politicians are something to be really grateful for. As a comedian, I'd have to say that, you really don't have to make too much up. You just have to tweak it a little bit and you've got something working for you. So I think that gratitude is the main emotion I feel towards them.
Okay, and so therefore, did you feel gratitude enough to alienate West Bengal from the map of India and almost annex it to China?
No, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, I don't think that, that was just me trying to sketch out the natural historical forces for you and sort of show you the direction in which it's going, which is that once China has swallowed up the Northeast, which it inevitably will, then Calcutta's next, right? And we have Maoists or Moists. The Moists. Right?
Moists.
Moists, we have, Moists everywhere. And they're being spotted all the time, daily, by the chief minister.
Yes.
And you can't really doubt her word. So I would say it's just a matter of time, before this happens. So it's completely plausible. There's no sort of personal sort of opinions involved here at all.
Okay,
Not really.
okay. Nilanjana, do you have a favorite character from your book? And does he or she represent anyone?
I have a favorite character from Shovon's book, which is, the competent authority, which I think of as a dark autobiographical version of himself. But my book, by and large, I don't think the cats are representative of anything. I keep telling people that I didn't write the book so much as translated it from the dark doings around the neighborhood. And the thing is that I had a choice. Everyone who lives in Delhi has a choice.
Yes.
When you're writing realist fiction, you get politicians. You can give up completely and write about aliens. Or you can write about local Dilliwalas who have nice family ties and are peaceful and filled with love and respect, in which case you're left with cats and langurs. And my editor, David Devdar, threw the langurs and the cows and the pigs out on the basis that we needed to offend one species at one time. But and in terms of the cats being autobiographical, there was a character called Mara, who was the first cat that my husband and I met, or rather, she came into our lives. And a lot of the book was based on her. She used to sit out there with whiskers extended, communing with the world at large, completely eschewing things like primetime television, in favor of a nice chat with the neighborhood. And she was a window into that.
Okay. So taking on from, this concept of sending, Samit, in your book, you write about how Aman is able to sort of immediately access Wi-Fi and Google and, immediately, and he uses that to sort of change the world. Is that the world you see, or is that where the world is heading, where, something like that, and he's transferred money from the rich to the poor and all of that?
No, I mean, accessing Wi-Fi whenever I want is just a fantasy at this point. And I haven't been able to in a while, not that that's relevant to any of this. But yeah, I mean, I think, and again, that's something that's happening in fact, right? We're approaching this point called the singularity, and already, I mean, the things that we can do with our phones and ourselves nowadays are not things we'd even, that doesn't sound right, are not even things that we'd have imagined, just a decade ago. And we were just doing a session this morning at La Martiniere on technology and so on, and while the kids there got very annoyed when I told them that they didn't think and they didn't get bored and were therefore essentially inferior to people who had come before, they did agree that the world that they were living in is already a world that people of previous generations could not even imagine. So, so yeah, we are headed towards a world where we can't even imagine what sort of hacking will lead to what sort of global change.
Yeah, absolutely. You're quite right. In fact, you also write about, in all the books there are shades of gray, black and white. So Jay being the so-called anti-hero and Veer being this, hero. And likewise, Shovon, in your case as well. So do you believe that part of this, world outside of the real world is also going to be black and white, shades of gray, or is there a more utopian world out there?
I think there is a utopian world out there. I think that the attempts to tie down the police will be defeated eventually, and they'll be able to sort of work as they want to work and the way they deserve to work.
That's your utopia.
Yeah. And I think that at some point, finally, the man who's been working behind the scenes, the competent authority to make our lives the way it is today, I mean, he will finally come to the forefront and sort of gain the accolades, because that's the only thing. He's anonymous, right? So even though he has all this power and he's doing so many good things, like, you know, a Section 377 and declaring curfew when there's a danger of dengue breaking out. You know, he's doing a lot of good things, right? But the thing that eats away at him is that he doesn't get any recognition for those things. There are no statues. Like, look at these guys. Who were they? But they've got statues. He doesn't, right? Yeah, I mean, what?
Warren Hastings. I don't
This
know.
Warren
who the
Hastings?
other- I don't know who
Which
his-
one? That one?
The chap
Says
with
so.
the
Right, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Forget about Warren Hastings. See, he would have had somebody, you know, behind him whom we don't. We are talking about the man behind, you know, Warren Hastings. Not literally. There's nothing behind that, but you know, in general. So I think that it'll be a much happier day when he gets his, you know, just reward. And you know, there are pictures everywhere, and you know, celebrations on his birthday and statues. Absolutely.
And literary meets.
Absolutely. I mean, if Mayawati can have statues, then and with handbags, you know, then why can't he? You know? So,
Yes,
so I look
absolutely.
forward to a utopian, much better world where these people all sort of, you know, they're so happy and, you know, cheerful and, you know, much better.
So in 2030, that hadn't happened, right? Your book is sort of 2 decades from now, and that hasn't happened.
See, what happens is that in the future, India is not so much shining as glowing because of the radiation, because there's been a nuclear war, right? And China's dropped the bomb on us. And in the middle of all that confusion, and because most of the cabinet got incinerated, some people noticed, you know, and so one of them was the Competent Authority, and he kind of took over. And so that was a great moment. So the golden age started just after the war, you know, where he finally managed to, you know, sort of get rid of all the distractions and take charge of everything, you know, personally, and take forward the fight against free speech, you know, and Twitter and, you know, all those things. So he's been, you know, it's been good. It's been good.
So talking of Twitter, you've just put up a case study today, and you're giving some rewards to people who can, the best answers, the Peepwell Industries. Have you got any answers already?
I've got a number of answers. They're much better than the original article, which is not saying much, but still.
Yes.
You have to give them credit.
So those who follow Shovon on Twitter can read about his article about blanket distribution. I mean, it's a case study about Peepwell Industries that deals in, is a company that is selling blankets.
I'm trying to give back to society by doing a management course, which consists of whatever bits of management I can still remember. And we're all putting it together. It's happening once a week until people find out where I live. So that's kind of the...
So you spoke of recognition, and you said the competent authority is waiting for recognition at some point. As authors, why do you write? For recognition? What is it that makes you pick up a pen and start writing?
If any of us started writing for money, we probably wandered into the wrong profession. I write for cat food, and so far the books have done an admirable, not to eat myself, but just to feed to the cats.
What does it taste like?
Kind of chickeny. Yeah, everything tastes of chicken. But more seriously, I think the official answer to this is that you write because you have deep, dark, inchoate longings in your breast, and this is the only way you can express them, by inflicting them on a willing audience of victims through the via media of a publisher who's willing to lose large sums of money by killing a forest of trees, you know, which is what we usually say. But the truth is that I was just following reality. I mean, everybody calls the books fantasy because they're about a clan of cats, and because the humans who are seen as big feats are dealt out of the picture to some extent. What I was looking at was internet cat memes. Cat memes and lolcats and pictures of kittens currently control over 50% of the world's internet real estate.
Okay.
You know, I mean, you can't, well, theoretically they could. I mean, they're getting there.
Samit has a counterpoint to that.
I guess socially acceptable internet real estate.
I don't look at the other kind because I'm pure, unlike, I mean, I write about cats, which is much safer territory than either of these two gentlemen out here. But the point about internet cat memes is really, you start with the idea that if you dealt humans out of existence, you'd have a much better world. If you had cats out here, you'd have trampolines instead of statues.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have sandpits instead
We
of
have a few
gardens.
cat people in the audience, and I think they'll tend to agree, right? Pradeep, Bonani? I think they'll agree with me as well. You spoke and said that, no, that's not true. 50% of internet is not cute cat pictures.
It will be.
It will be. So that really brings me to the point that today, all our internet is, you know, firewalled and controlled in offices. You can't access this page, web page proxy, etc. in your world, that seems very easily done, and there doesn't seem to be any firewalls.
Well, I actually work from home where there are no firewalls.
Okay.
So
But even in your book,
yeah.
you talk about,
No, and in
accessing
fact, that's
anything.
why, I mean, I became a writer so that no one could restrict my access to Facebook while I was working.
Yeah.
You know, and which worked out pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say to this really, because yeah, obviously we want a world where you have free speech and people can find out things. Like I want to find out who this guy is. You know,
Anybody?
I'm thinking sort of Jet Li in a steampunk avatar. But yeah, I mean, I wish we could have a world where there was free speech and access to information and equal opportunity and all of that, and that's perhaps the biggest fantasy of all.
Yeah, that's quite right. In fact, so you know, some of the stuff that you've written in your book about politicians and everything, what sort of criticism has come about, and how do you react to some of that?
You know, that's a very good question. I think all your questions are very good questions, actually. But you know, more about bureaucrats and politicians. But she's here. Nilanjana is here, right? And she comes. She's this lady. See her whole her whole family is like IAS officers, but she kind of slipped through the cracks and avoided becoming one. And the moment I heard, I was extremely scared. And I said, "My God, don't let any of your family read this book, because if even one income tax officer gets after me, I'm done. I'm one of those small, weak people. I don't need, like, you know, the whole might of the government. One IT guy is good enough." You know, and she said that actually I've given it to 2 of my uncles, and I said, "That's terrible." And she said, actually they both loved it, except one of them had a criticism. And I said, "Look, what was the criticism?" And she said that, you know, you describe various punishments in your book of how the competent authority, the head of the IAS, punishes the other IAS officers by making them wag like dogs and twist their own nipples. I think that's the first time somebody's uttered the word nipples out here, right? Anyway, so twist their own nipples, right? And he said, you know, these punishments that your friend was talking about, please tell him that the actual punishments in the IAS, they're much, much worse than that. So I think that's been the reaction that I've got. Politicians know, because I assume that none of them read, so that's not really a problem.
Yeah, so at least as far as that is concerned, we're safe. But maybe anonymously we should send one of these and have someone, you know, read it out to them as bedtime stories or something.
Give me some advance notice so I can, you know, apply for asylum to a place where they'll take me, because that'll be helpful.
You can come right here at the Taj and we'll look after you.
Thank you. That's
wonderful.
So nice. I'll take a sweet.
Done.
Thank you.
At this point, is there someone who might, you know, who's read one of the books or has something that they want to ask any of the authors here with me? No. So I'm sorry, you're back again to listening to me, and you know, the babble will continue. Have you, Samit, read
Yes.
Shovon's book? And what is your...
No, I agree entirely both with the book
Yes,
in letter and spirit.
Okay.
And I urge all of you to go out and spend your hard-earned rupees and dollars eventually on acquiring this book for yourself. Just take the gun away.
Nilanjana, what's next after this? Because the sequel's done, The 100 Names of Darkness. So what are you thinking of? What world are you entering?
It's moving in 2 directions. My father came up to me after he finished reading The 100 Names of Darkness, and he said, "So, your second book, wonderful, great cover. I really like the cover." And I was sending something out here. He said, "It's about cats." So I said, "Yes." He said, "Like the first book." So I said, "Yes." He said, "But there are other species in it this time as well. There are bandicoots." And he waited for a second. And he said, "Are you going to work your way up to humans at some point?" So at this point, what I'm trying to do is procrastinate delivering the 3rd book in the series, which is wonderful, because that way what happens is that you wait for letters from readers to come in. And these letters are amazing. People have already put together the plot for me, unpaid, for free, because they have ideas about what the senders should do next. And people say, "Bring back the tiger." There's the tiger in the book. Now that you got rid of the bandicoots, move the entire action to Goa so that we can all go there and have a holiday, and you can be invited by the Goa Lit Fest, which hadn't occurred to me, but this is an excellent reason to write books. I'm working on a book, though, about reading, which has been on the anvil for a long while because I actually had to teach myself to read before I started work on it. And it was a collection of my journalism initially, and it's just changed and evolved. It's becoming much more a book about growing up in houses in Calcutta that had libraries, and then discovering years later that the libraries of some of the places that I knew of were being recycled at auction houses, how those books, you know, the history of those books. Going to Delhi, thinking of it not as a city of readers until I walked into Shamlal's house. And Shamlal was this legendary editor who literally built a house of books. I don't mean the outer walls, but the inner walls. He had every single wall where he could put in bookshelves, he did. And then after that, he had interior walls built of bricks and books and bricks and books. And he could lie there in the middle of that house and tell you where you could put your hand on a book. He opened up a world of Delhi to me that started with Old Delhi and with wandering around publishers, firms out there. And I think publishing is underestimated. You know, authors get the spotlight and we get the reputation for being eccentric. But the first time I met one of the Old Delhi Daryaganj publishers, he walked in and he said, "Here, take a look at this sword. Do you think it's sharp enough?" Okay. And I said nervously, "It seems like a fine blade. What are you going to do?" And he said, "Oh, I have an authors meeting next." It turned out, as it happened, that the two things were not directly linked. You know, he had a historical sword that he